Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on China and foreign aggression in Asia is Brett Kingstone. Mr. Kingstone is a high-tech entrepreneur, award-winning real estate developer, inventor, author, and generous philanthropist. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Kingstone.
It must be Wednesday, 6:30, because I'm back with my precious, admired listeners and guests, and I love you all because you share so many great ideas with me. Even when you disagree with me vehemently, you give me insights that I didn't have before, so you add to my wisdom. So God bless you all. Keep on listening. Tell your friends about it, and keep on challenging me or agreeing with me with whatever you like. Today I have a guest who's very brilliant, very successful. I funded him when he was a little boy. He's still a little boy. He's grown a little older, but he's really brilliant, and I love him. And he has strong feelings. I admire his convictions. As a matter of fact, his convictions are so strong. I'm surprised he hasn't been arrested yet.
Well, I have, Marty. I had a few street fights in my day.
Other people that suffer convictions, they lock up. You're still out running around loose.
The problem is they let me out, Morty.
Anyway, truthfully, he's a genius, and he's a delightful human being, even though he disagrees with me about 90% of the times. I've become much more moderate with the years, and he's stuck to his fighting spirit. So, I want to make peace. I want to negotiate. I want to use diplomacy, and he's ready to go to battle right away. So, without further ado, I want to get onto the subject that we noted we're going to, as we sent you a notice that we're going to try to cover today. So let's start with the fact that a Chinese fighter spy balloon, first a Chinese sky balloon flew over the United States. That was wrong, and we have a right to be really very angry, and they should stop doing that because they're intruding on our land and that they don't have a right to do that. And then more recently, a Chinese fighter jet
Flew in front of one of our jets, Morty. One of our
crossed the path of an American reconnaissance plane that was the end of last month, in late May, as it flew in international airspace. That's the key words. Our plane flew in international airspace above the South China Sea, forcing the American plane to fly through the Chinese aircraft wake. The wake is the turbulence that leaves behind.
Yep.
So I fight with my producer here because he says the Chinese are terrible because they do that, and they have no right to do that, and I don't disagree with him, but I also don't agree to this extent. I think instead of making an issue every time and there's some provocation on our part because we're flying our plane or our destroyer, I think, right in the sea between Taiwan and China. And while it's international waters, just because it's okay to do or it's right to do, I don't think it's smart to keep on provoking somebody that's trying to build up their own military and could become a dangerous foe of ours. I believe that China can do a lot of good things for the United States, and we can do a lot of good things for them. And we do a lot of things. We help them, but they helped us a lot. As a matter of fact, until Trump, I thought unwisely, put tariffs on Chinese goods. The minute they did that, I knew we were going to have inflation because all the products, or not all, but overwhelmingly, all the products, the overwhelming number of products that we get at Walmart or Target or Home Depot or Lowe's or dollar stores come from China. And our blue-collar workers and all the rest of us are able to access those products for maybe 10 or 20% of what it would cost them if the same goods were produced in the United States. So I thought that was wrong. Trump kept saying how much tariffs we were collecting. And who pays the tariffs? The Americans, because it's added to the price that they pay when they go to the store to buy the product. So I have a more moderate approach to China. I think we've benefited from their wisdom, and they've benefited from our wisdom. We make a big deal that they steal our intellectual property. I assure you, we steal a lot of their intellectual property. Just like every time the Russians say they caught an American spy, we say, no, he wasn't a spy, he was they're visiting and so forth. And maybe that's true. But in all the years, we know we've had tons of spies there, and they've had tons of spies our way in the United States. And when we announce we caught a spy, they deny it. They never once said, "Oh yeah, you caught our guy." or when the Russians announced they caught an American spying on them, we say, "No, he wasn't a spy. He was just a tourist or so forth." We never say, "Oh yeah, you caught him." So we spy on our allies. So none of us are So recently, Biden said something that I loved. He said, when they judge him about his performance and his political know-how and everything that he's done since he's become president, he says, I agree. I'm not the Almighty. I'm not the Almighty, but I am the alternative, and that's brilliant because none of us are so perfect. Just like I'm lecturing a guy who appears every.
Morty, did he say that when he was falling down the steps and tripping over himself at a graduation, or what?
I don't think that's so important as long as he gets up and he's well. As long as his mind works well and he has the energy. He works 24 hours a day. He flies around like crazy.
24 hours a day. He spends most of his time at his home in Delaware in the basement. Not working for the American people, Morty.
That's not true. That's the.
Morty, you can look at his schedule.
You must be watching Fox 24 hours a day.
Even CNN and the
I
recently wrote a piece about that.
I get more work done in my basement than I do in any other room. So,
Morty, you can, because you make things happen.
but
Biden's not Morty Davis. Trust me.
look, recently he negotiated something bipartisan that the
Yeah, that's after 90 days of ignoring the Republicans approaching him with a budget
Yeah.
that he ignored.
Republicans approached him with a budget that said, cut Social Security, cut Medicare, stop giving starving children food.
Morty, you must be seeing too much CNN. That sounds like CNN. That wasn't the case. They just wanted him to cut back.
No,
He
they
had $33 trillion in debt, Morty. You know that.
I heard what was in their proposal.
Morty,
So
do you think 31 trillion is a good number for debt for this country? Don't you think it's disastrous? Your grandchildren will each owe $250,000 by the time they're ready to go to college. Our debt is unsustainable, Morty. And you're a businessman. You're a great businessman.
let me give you an insight that you probably don't know.
Please.
And you should check it out. Every time the Democrats get in, the Republicans scream and yell, we got to balance the budget, we got to cut the debt, and if anything, the Republicans always explained it, always.
Both sides are to blame, Morty. I agree with you. Both
No,
sides are to blame. But the Democrats are spending money on insane
both sides,
ideas.
not both sides.
We should be spending on.
The Republicans don't care about those at the bottom, those at the poverty level, or
Well, I think the opposite, Morty. The Republican Party's become the working class party.
the
The working class people are supporting them.
their main objective is to cut taxes for the rich. Do you know that Trump was in only 4 years? His 4 years, we had the largest increase in the debt in the history of the country.
Well, a lot of that was due to COVID initiatives that both sides were pushing very hard, Morty. We had a COVID disaster, and we were spending trillions of dollars supporting businesses that were going out of business.
$2 trillion of that, roughly $2 trillion of that was a tax cut.
Compared to 31 trillion that he had when he came in office, that's less than 10%, Morty. I'm telling you, right now, we have to cut that $31 trillion debt.
Why do you blame,
Chinese will be running this country.
with all due respect, why are you blaming that on the Democrats?
I'm blaming it on both parties, Morty.
No, the Republicans refused to cut military spending. The guy who was the most knowledgeable, and every president, when they complete their tenure in office, they make a speech to the nation how well they did for the country. You know, what they.
State of the Union. State of the Union. Morty.
No, it's not the State of the Union. When they're leaving office.
Okay.
They did this.
Farewell speech. Farewell speech.
Yeah, the farewell speech. And they try to enumerate what they did and how great they were. And that's okay, you know, that's normal. Eisenhower was the only one, when he finished his tenure, 8 years, I thought he was a terrible president, because you're not a great president unless you serve during some major catastrophe, you know. So if there's a
Well,
war,
he was a general in World War II.
he was number one general.
World War II.
He was the number one general in the history of the United States.
Well, for all the Allies, he was the commander in chief. Yeah.
The Germans. So, what was the speech about? He warned.
He warned about the military-industrial complex. Morty, and I thought that was a great warning he gave us. I agree with you.
He's right.
After this term, he became a brilliant statesman.
And he's right. And you know what the Defense Department was called when I was young?
No, what?
You don't
The
know?
War Department. The War Department. Right. Yeah.
Figured out that's not good, you know?
Now our Defense Department's called the Woke Department, and they're building the transvestite.
It's
We're
called,
going to have cross-dressers attacking Putin.
called-
I'm sure he's going to be terrified.
it's yeah,
You call it the Woke Department.
if the drag does
The
that,
drag queens attacking Russia and China.
drag
We're
queens-
going to be terrified. For it.
they think they're aliens and they get scared. No, but that's the biggest waste. When when the Cold War ended, everybody said, "Oh, it's great. We'll get a big dividend in the sense that we won't have to spend so much on military." So it was a
Well,
big.
let's talk about China, Morty, because I know that's the key subject, and I know that's something that probably you and I might agree on. Go ahead.
No, we won't agree on that.
Well, at least it'll be interesting, right?
I want to point out one thing, then we can talk about that.
Go ahead.
Reagan was wise to point out, although it doesn't seem to be true, that a strong military, a strong, well-prepared, if we stay strong and well-prepared,
Is a deterrent.
it's a deterrent.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Agreed.
yeah, you agree, and I agree, and what?
See, we both agree.
Yeah, but it's wrong, because because even though we both agree, it's wrong because there's no country, and I love America. I'd give my life to fight for this country if it was, it was like the Second World War. But we've been in more wars. We, the United States, have been in more wars than any other country in the world. Since the end of the Second World War, we've been in the Korean War, which we never, to this day, we don't have a peace treaty. We're still, enemies. Then we were in the Vietnam War. I don't know why we were there. It's not our territory. It's not Madison. Madison said we should just stay on the North and South America, on this part of the world.
We invaded Panama. We invaded several other Latin American countries, and we had Iraq, Afghanistan.
Don't forget.
Now we have.
Don't forget Grenada.
Ukraine's a proxy war, Morty.
What?
War.
Yeah, no, so I'm saying we're in more wars. After that, we were in Vietnam, then we were in Iraq. Bush attacked Iraq.
Remember Panama? We invaded Panama and took their leader out.
So what about it?
Yeah, that was a war.
Was that an important victory for the United States?
No, it was just they decided they wanted to remove Noriega, so they did.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we were in a war where we defended America, because we have till this day we've never been attacked on our own territory.
Well, that's not correct. We were attacked on 9/11, Morty. We were attacked in New York City on our own territory by a bunch of Arab terrorists.
Not by a country, by a bunch of 9 out of the 12.
Al Qaeda, which is
9 out of the 12
Afghanistan.
were Saudi Arabians, but with no. That was the stupidest thing. We attacked Afghanistan because all these Saudis or all these Al Qaeda attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon.
Well, that was bin Laden's base, Morty. That's why we attacked Afghanistan. It was the base of bin Laden. And you know what, Morty? One thing you and I agree on, we should have bombed them into the Stone Age. One of our troops.
Don't attack. It's the stupidest thing in the world. You don't attack a country to get 3 guys or 10 guys or whatever number. The way we did, we got bin Laden. We got him in Pakistan because we started getting it. To attack a country, especially...
We lost too many people in that war. It wasn't necessary.
Well, especially, we should have had the wisdom and the knowledge that any average guy would know that Russia was at war with Afghanistan for 10 years.
And they lost.
And they left
and before that, the British for almost 50 years, and they lost.
So how did we go in? We lost 3,000 people, and we got even with them by losing, I don't know how many people. We lost so much blood, and Americans, young people, and
tens of thousands wounded. Yes.
And the wounded till we'll be paying that.
I see kids in their late 20s, early 30s. In the gym, lifting weights with me with prosthetic legs and prosthetic arms.
There you go.
Look, of this war. I agree with you. So we agreed a second time, Morty.
It was
going off on a good.
It was only 3 years ago People don't realize that you pay for the war many, many years after. 'Cause
Absolutely.
it's only 3 or 4 years ago that the last veteran of the Second World War was released from a veterans hospital. So that we've been treating those people, thousands and thousands of people, all these years since 1945 or something, the end of the war. So wars are terrible, and we send our best young people to kill other young people that if we didn't send them to kill the wars, they possibly or probably could be best friends and work together and both.
War is a failure of diplomacy. War is a result of failed diplomacy.
We are the major agitator on that score. So after that was Afghanistan, Iraq, the second.
And now the Ukraine, Morty.
And
you know what? The Ukrainian war could have been averted had we had a president with half a brain in his head, because he could have met with Putin in Geneva and solved this problem in 24 hours. Instead, Biden sat on his behind in his basement in Delaware, and we got us into a war that's totally unnecessary. Morty, almost $100 billion of our tax money is going to Ukraine to fight a war that should have taken a 10-hour meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, between our president and theirs. We got a president who's so feeble-minded, he's not capable of.
I'll tell you what I advocated before it started. I told my producer, I said,
Please.
It's idiotic for us not to try negotiation first. Because
absolutely agree with you, Morty.
No,
absolutely agree.
I don't know if you know what Putin said. Putin said, if you don't let Ukraine become
into NATO,
I won't attack. So
exactly. All we had a promise, Morty.
All you do is go visit him and say,
okay, for 5 to 10 years, you have a deal.
We don't need Ukraine in NATO to be, the Ukraine wants to be a member because they're under our protection.
Look what they could have given up just for peace instead of having all their cities destroyed. Tens of thousands of women, children, men murdered, okay?
Yeah, but
the place is a bombed out mess. Right now.
The United States
cut a deal. They should have cut a deal.
And inspired them because they never negotiated. They always point to Chamberlain. Chamberlain came back from visiting with Hitler, and he said, we gave them, what was it? Yucatistan.
We'll have peace. Just negotiate with Hitler. We'll have peace in our time.
No, he did.
We'll have peace in our time, he said.
And then he was devastated because Hitler didn't live up to
He invaded Poland a couple of weeks later.
Yes. So,
but you got to understand something. Hitler's a different individual than Putin.
You
negotiated with.
You missed the point. He was destroyed. He died brokenhearted because he thought he did something good, and everybody criticized him after that. So diplomacy became appeasement. The first thing you do is you try to avoid going to war.
So, Morty, can I tell you something? Because I did business in Russia. And I have Russian friends. Can I tell you something?
Let me just finish that.
Sure, please, go ahead.
Germany. It didn't change anything that Germany did. Either way, they would have done the same thing. So he tried, and I give him an A for effort.
I give Neville Chamberlain an F, Morty, an F minus, okay?
Give him an A for effort because nothing changed. The same exact end result would have happened either way. And you got to try. And the same with Ukraine.
But not with Russia. We could have resolved that problem.
No, I'm saying
we could have resolved it.
We could have resolved it easily because it's.
Agreed with you. Agreed with you.
We need Ukraine and NATO. We got 20 countries. Ukraine is going to make us stronger, and not that. But if Ukraine's a member, then if they go to war under our treaty,
and we become obligated to fight on their side. Correct.
All we had to do was say, sit down with Putin or send the Secretary of State or something to there and say, look, we'll agree not to invite NATO, Ukraine into NATO. But if you do, if you attack after that, we're going to come after you. We're not Ukraine. So that, you make them live up to their thing. If he doesn't respond to that, you're done.
My question to you, Morty, is why didn't Biden do as you said? What you said makes perfect sense. Why didn't Joe Biden do this?
Because all of his advisors and all his military, the military loves to go to war. The only time they get big promotions is when they go to war. And
He didn't do it because he's weak and he's stupid. That's why he didn't do it.
yeah,
Simple as that. You know what? You have generals, the president's in charge. He needs to take control. He needs to take the initiative. The generals don't tell the president what to do. Under the Constitution, the president tells the generals what to do.
I don't want to defend Biden because I thought he was wrong not to try diplomacy. So,
I agree with you, Marty. I agree with you. You're right.
but other people say you don't give in to, you don't. It's like Neville Chamberlain, and even you're saying Neville Chamberlain deserves an F because he tried to avoid war.
No, he miscalculated Hitler completely. I must tell you. You have to understand your enemy. When you go into battle, you get intelligence, you get knowledge of who you're negotiating with before you even start talking. Neville Chamberlain made a false assumption.
A lot of people didn't know how bad. Now, in retrospect, we know how bad Hitler was, but at that time, we didn't know yet. Look, some of our major guys, Lindbergh, Ford, so many major guys in this country were pro-Hitler.
That was because they were anti-Semites, Morty, not because they were wise men. They were anti-Semites. Ford was a absolute blatant anti-Semite. So he was in favor of Hitler because Hitler talked about exterminating the Jews. Had nothing to do with political politics.
They didn't realize that he was bad for America. That Ford loved America and Lindbergh loved America. They just felt, they didn't know yet. You know, nobody ever envisioned somebody as vicious and
I think that was more due to their anti-Semitism than their policies related to that.
I can understand anything. And believe me, I don't want to defend Biden's behavior with respect to Ukraine because it didn't have to be.
It didn't have to happen, Morty. I agree with you 1,000,000%.
Okay.
So, a little message from my friend Vladimir Karpov in Russia. Okay, as you know, when I had supervision, which thank God, because of you, the company went public and prospered. We had distributors throughout Russia. Our biggest one was Vladimir Karpov, who was in Moscow. I stayed friends with him. And his son stayed at my home here in Florida, and he'll be visiting me in Colorado, God willing, soon. My son stayed at his home in Moscow. We exchanged our sons for the summers. We have a great relationship. Vladimir told me several months ago, the only thing Putin was looking for is exactly what he said. He wanted a guarantee for a certain amount of time that Ukraine would join NATO. And the second promise is that the U.S. or Ukraine would never station nuclear missiles, whether they're a member of NATO or not, on their border facing Russia. Period. End. That's all we had to do. And we refused to do it. And one of the things Vladimir Karpov said to me, you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, Brett, when Brezhnev and the Russians were trying to bring missiles to Cuba? You sent out your ships. You were ready to start a nuclear war to keep missiles out of Cuba. Why would you expect us to do anything different? Ukraine's right on our border. Their border's closer to us than Cuba is to you, and you were willing to fight a nuclear war over this. You totally miscalculate Russia if you don't think we're willing to do the same. That's the analogy that he used.
I agree with that totally. Not only that, I'll tell you how wrong we were, the United States.
Please.
And I hate to be critical of my own country, but
no, not your own country, the leadership of our country.
What I meant.
You're not criticizing America. You're criticizing the policy leaders of our country, which is Biden and Anthony Blinken. Go ahead.
So when you criticize the behavior of your country, so
I love our country. I'm not criticizing it, but I will criticize the leaders who make mistakes.
I love our country. I told you I would give my life in an instant.
I believe you would, Morty.
But I think we've behaved terribly because I don't know if you realize when the Soviet Union ended the Cold War, right? Mm-hmm. It became supposedly at least neutral, not an enemy anymore.
Yes.
Within 2 years, shortly thereafter, not a long time after, we put missiles in Poland and Hungary.
Yeah, we violated our own treaty, Morty. You're right.
What kind of behavior is that when they did exactly what you want? We should have invited them to become a member of NATO because now they're a friend. You make them a friend. If you act like an enemy, and we're doing the same thing with China, we're going to wind up in a war unnecessarily because you don't provoke the other side.
China is a different issue, Morty, and I must tell you, it's very naive not to think that China has not been at war with us for the past 30 years. The past 30 years, China has been at war, sending millions of fentanyl pills across our border to poison and murder our children. They're stealing our intellectual property. I happen to know something about it since I wrote a book on China, The Real War Against America, talking about how they stole technology from the company that you funded, Supervision, and that I founded. And the other thing is, their foreign policy is directly directed against Americans. They threaten American lives. They send poison through our southern border. Those fentanyl pills are killing tens of thousands of, maybe 100,000 plus of our children. And in every case, they are stealing our technology and our know-how, counterfeiting it, and destroying our economy. Morty, you know something? We should pay an extra 10 or 20% and bring back manufacturing to the United States. It's worth it.
That's nonsense.
Because if we have
that's nonsense. That's nonsense.
No. Listen, I brought all my manufacturing.
The reason they say we want to bring it back is to have jobs. We got enough jobs for the next 50 years.
We don't have security, Morty, if we don't make our own weapon systems, our own telecommunication systems, our own computer chips, our own products in the United States. We'll cut us off. We'll have nothing.
We're the United States.
Security
of the father of all wars, because we provide every single country with the weaponry. Our major export is military equipment. It's outrageous.
Our major export is Morty.
It's outrageous. And not only that, the Chinese have tremendous intellectual property. Look at what's the...
They stole it from us, that's why.
They didn't steal it from us. Well,
Absolutely stole it from us.
The name of the one? Waha, something.
Huawei.
Huawei.
Telecommunications maker.
They're way ahead of us on that. And we have told all our allies, don't buy it. They all bought it.
They use it to spy on us, Morty.
So
they use their transmission systems and routers.
I don't deny that.
Steal our technology.
Spy on them as much as they spy on us. So stop being naive. Every country spy.
Morty.
I want to know.
China is already at war with us, Morty.
Kill any Americans?
Just asleep at the wheel.
They kill any Americans?
Huh?
You say they killed the Americans?
Yeah, with fentanyl poisoning. Who do you think that the Mexicans get all the fentanyl from? China. That's a known fact.
That's not their fault. We should stop it.
Not their fault that they know millions of fentanyl pills crossing a border every day.
We don't control the demand. If there was no demand in the United States, nobody would make it.
Who's being naive now, Morty?
No, I'm not being naive.
Morty, if we exported millions of fentanyl pills to another country, you don't think they'd declare a war on us? Come on, let's be honest. If we were sending millions of fentanyl pills to Mexico and killing hundreds of thousands of Mexican children, you don't think Mexico would start a war with us?
Well, it's our people that spend the money for it. If we stop that, the demand creates supply.
They're now masquerading these pills like candy. They're painting them candy colors. They're trying to sell them as candy to our children.
Only because there's great demand. No other country has the kind of demand that the United States has. We've got to stop it in our internal. We can't.
I'll make it very simple for you. If somebody sold drugs to my daughter,
other countries, you're saying,
put them down, I'd kill them myself.
You're saying we should control other countries because we can't handle the
We should penalize countries who sell illegal drugs
the misbehavior because we can handle the misbehavior that our people do.
I could tell you, yes, we need to train and educate our kids not to take drugs.
We have
We're responsible.
to
Arrest a drug dealer on the street corner of New York. Why don't we arrest an international drug dealer that's putting 1,000 times more drugs into this country illegally. It's breaking our law, Morty.
Why don't we just correct our people? You keep saying we should correct everybody else in the world.
If a drug dealer sells drugs to our children on the street corner, he goes to jail.
Good. If they stop using it, every American knows you could go down the corner, you can make a phone call, get all the drugs you want.
You're right.
So that's our fault. That's our lack of.
So what do you recommend we do? What do you think the solution is?
Saying, will you stop the demand and you control?
How?
You
How do you stop them?
don't let salesmen in this country. You don't let people buy it. If they buy it, they get fined. They get.
We tried that. We had our prisons filled with people who bought marijuana and cocaine. It didn't work. Filled with people who bought marijuana, cocaine, and now we legalized marijuana, and now cocaine's a misdemeanor. So we had millions of people who were taking drugs that were locked up. It didn't work. So what's the next solution?
I don't know. I don't know. But you don't say we can't solve our problems, so we're going to attack the other country for the.
No, you attack the people who are pushing the drugs on our children, whether they be domestic or international.
People from buying it. If they didn't buy it, they would.
Okay, how do you stop them from buying it then, Morty? Tell me.
We got to figure out how to do that.
Okay.
We can't if we can't control our own people. We want to control immigration, so we do things.
So you know what my answer to you is? We put God back in the classroom. The minute we took God out of the classroom, we got teenage pregnancies, we got mass murders and shootings, and we got kids high on drugs. The key thing we are missing in the lives of our children that they're reaching out to drugs as an alternative is they have no basis of any belief anymore of something, a higher purpose in life and a higher person.
I
need to get back to that.
agree with you that this country, religion has disappeared
completely.
But you can't do it in classrooms because there's Jewish.
You have to do it in classrooms, Morty. Giving the kids lunches because their parents have no food on the table. Not giving them education about God.
I don't want my kids to have to pray to Christ because it's.
Morty, I went to Farragut Military Academy. I had to say the Lord's Prayer every morning, the Christian prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, our kingdom come. I even memorized it. I was 9 years old. I was the only Jew in the camp. It didn't bother me. You know what I liked? I got discipline. I learned how to use a gun. I learned how to box. I learned how to fight. Those were the things that gave me the foundation that allowed my company to succeed and my family to succeed.
Look, I got up in Boston every day when I lived there 2 years. Mm-hmm. And, Father, who was the Cardinal, I think Cardinal Cushing. Mm-hmm. The first thing on the radio, he repeated that prayer over and over again.
Our Father who art in heaven, right. You know, Morty, my friends take me to Catholic churches. Johnny Mendez,
you can't,
the New York City Fire Department. Every time I'm in New York, I go to Catholic churches.
You can't take it.
No problem.
I don't like.
I'm not offended.
I don't like the idea of introducing religion into schools where little kids are brainwashed.
Well, since the 60s, we took God out of the schools, and look at the mess we've got now. Maybe it's time to make a change. Look at the mess we got now. We got kids that are changing their gender like they think they're changing their.
We took it out in the Constitution. We took it out.
Morty, all I can say to you, it was a big mistake.
Can't introduce religion.
You can make an amendment to the Constitution anytime by
voting
to the House and the Senate.
I don't want to do that. I think that we should, encourage, induce, even incentivize people to make their kids. Look, somebody just on television is running for office. He's a Republican too, I think. So anyway, he was saying when he was young, his parents still were coming out of the slave period. He said, but every family that in his town had a mother and a father. Yep. That's the biggest problem today, that our young African Americans don't have that. And
it's not just African Americans, Morty. It's a lot of white people that don't have a father in the house. And a lot of Hispanic people don't have a father in the house. The biggest problem I could tell you is there is no more family unit. It's broken down. It's been destroyed in this country. And the other thing is faith in God, a belief in a higher power has gone out the window, Morty. We should fire the teachers union and completely redo the American education system. The teachers union are left-wing lunatics who are indoctrinating our kids into communists and socialism. I know what communism and socialism. My grandparents escaped Russia because of communism and socialism. You know what communism and socialism is? Atheism. They burned Jewish villages to the ground and slums, no different than what Hitler did in Nazi Germany. They have the totalitarian rule, and it's atheism. They don't want to believe in God or anything else. This is where our children are raised now.
It wasn't the practice of communism. It was being led by Hitler-type guys. Stalin was a Hitler-type guy. He killed more Jews.
Totalitarian, but you can't have communism or socialism without a totalitarian leader.
They had communism when they started, and they never had a problem. They didn't kill people. The state of Israel.
They had kibbutzim.
That
It was not communism, Morty. It was collective farming.
That's the most communist thing that you could have. It was the whole institution, or the whole tribe, the whole community.
It wasn't communism, Marty. It was kibbutzim. Okay.
But it was communism because whatever income they had,
Collective farming. That's all.
they shared it according to people's needs.
And quite frankly, if that's what they choose to do,
Words became pejorative.
you want this country to become communist, Morty? You're
No.
the biggest capitalist I know.
No,
You want America to become communist? Is that what you're saying?
to take good ideas from any place in the world, as the Chinese have done. The Chinese are communists, right?
Yes, correct.
Marx would turn over in his grave 40 times because there's more billionaires in China than there is in the United States.
No, that's not true. The United States has more billionaires than China, but China is the second largest amount of billionaires in the world. Okay?
China has more billionaires than the
You need
United
to look at the Forbes 400 again, Morty.
States. Okay.
All right.
But
Get back to China. They're our number one enemy. Do you agree?
China make as much money as you like, and you don't have to share it with everybody. So they're not communists. You know what? The Chinese are smart. They take the best ideas from the United States and incorporate it in their country, and that's how they advance.
And under this administration, Morty, I agree with you. He takes the worst ideas and he makes them national policy. It's the most corrupt organization I've ever seen.
We don't, because we say the minute you say give more help to the underclass, they say, oh, you're taking money from the people from the makers, and you're giving it to the.
Morty, we're not helping the underclass. We're helping the military-industrial complex. They're making more money in this war in Afghanistan than they've ever made in history. Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed, all their missiles are going to Ukraine right now. We're not helping our poor people right now. We're giving hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. This is outrageous.
We have
A highway robbery.
lots of programs that help the lowest of our earners and the ones that can't even get jobs. So we help them.
Already welfare destroys people as bad as drugs. Okay? We need to give people a hand up, not a hand out.
It's exaggerated by the Republicans that so many people are. You don't forego the good for the perfect. There's always going to be people who are there's more rip-offs by wealthy people who don't need the money of their taxes than there are people who are on welfare. They're cheating on
I don't
welfare.
know where you're getting your data from, Morty, but I disagree with that. I think what's happening is we're addicting multi-generational things.
One of the things that they cut back on in this thing, the Republicans cut back on,
Okay?
money to the IRS to audit wealthy people.
We don't need another 87,000 stormtroopers in the IRS knocking on the doors of
Audit
the class family, robbing them. It's
That-
ridiculous, Morty. Ridiculous.
It's not stormtroopers. They don't do it. You know, more poor blacks
You know
get
that guy who testified
more.
about Biden taking bribes in the Twitter files? The
More-
IRS showed up on his door the day he was testifying before Congress.
More, what do you call it? More African Americans are audited than the top 1% or
Where are
10%.
you getting this information, Morty?
I got it from, what do you call it? From supposedly people that know.
People that know.
I didn't research it myself.
Well, it's not fact.
Now that you put
It's
me
an opinion, but it's not a fact.
it is a fact. It is a fact. Because the wealthy, even Warren Buffett said how outrageous it is. He says it's outrageous that my secretary pays a higher tax rate than I
Right,
do.
but he never said that more African Americans are paying higher taxes
No, but I heard.
than Caucasians. That's statistically impossible. The African American population is less than 20% of the entire nation. 80% of it is either Caucasian, Asian, or Hispanic. There is no way African Americans, on a mathematical basis, could possibly be audited more than the general population.
I said more than the top 10%. There are far more African Americans than there are in the top 10%.
Okay, but I'm telling you that's not correct.
Top 10%, you got to make over maybe $400 million.
I get audited all the time, Morty. I pay millions of dollars a year in taxes. I'm happy to pay it. I love this country, but I don't like where the money's being wasted.
You're one of the good guys. Look, I'll give you the easiest that was visible for the world to see. For years, Apple, Amazon, all these companies.
They don't pay a dime in taxes. I agree with you.
Moved their earnings overseas. You know what Apple did? It was genius. And all the pharmaceutical companies did the same. They moved they sold their intellectual property to a subsidiary in Ireland, right?
Right, or the Isle of Man, or in Bahamas.
Just tell me what they did with
And they moved their corporate headquarters overseas, so they don't
let me tell you what happened.
Yeah.
So they did a survey, or a statistical survey of how much each employee in the United States who works for Apple produces a year in revenues. So it was like, I don't know, $400,000 a year. The average employee in Ireland was producing like $11 million. Why? Why? Because they were paying a royalty to use the intellectual property, and they accumulated billions of dollars.
It's called transfer pricing.
And they accumulated billions of dollars. This is public.
I believe you.
So you know what they said? They said, let us bring it back. Give us an attractive rate, and we'll bring it back to the country. So why would you let them get a lower rate when they're evading taxes? It's legal, so they're avoiding. What's his name? Who was the first Jewish Supreme Court? What?
Louis Brandeis, Justice Louis Brandeis.
Avoiding taxes is legal. Evading taxes is illegal. Right. So they were avoiding taxes, but they were really evading taxes because it's manipulative. It's just like they carried interest that what's his name, Schwartzman, who's Jewish. They said that they carried Blackstone.
Blackstone, sorry, yeah.
BlackRock is also Jewish. Think is also Jewish. BlackRock runs more money than any other company in the world. Did you know that?
Yes.
BlackRock. But anyway, so you know what carried interest is?
It's for me. It's being used as a tax scheme. But go ahead.
No, I'll tell you specifically how it works. So you see, I don't know how they ever got away with it. Blackstone or all these private equity funds that manage money, so they charge something like 2% for management, right?
Right.
And they get 20% of the profits, right? So 2%, they pay regular taxes because that's their work.
The profits are long-term capital gains.
The profits are long-term gains for the investors.
Right.
But there shouldn't be long-term capital gains for the reason you give them favorable tax treatment to invest capital is because they're putting money at risk. So you say, you put money at risk, we'll give you a lower rate. We want
In this case, they have no risk. They're getting a percentage of their investors'
You're right.
Right.
So, but from day one, somehow they filed as if they were investors and reported capital gains on trillions of dollars. So what happens? So if finally they said, let us bring it back, we'll create jobs, we'll create new factories, new equipment. So we reduced it to 10% for them. This goes back, I don't know, 30 years or something. I forget under whose administration.
Right.
Maybe under George Bush, the father, but I don't remember exactly. So they brought it back with the promise that they're going to create jobs and create new equipment. You don't create new jobs when you're operating at 65% of capacity. You don't create new equipment. You don't buy new equipment when you're operating at. So when the money came back, you know what they did? Like they did recently. They did it for the second time with the same promise. They bought shares in their own company. What do they call that?
Repurchase.
What?
Stock repurchase.
Stock repurchases, that runs up the stock, and they increased dividends. That's what they did, because we gave them a break and let them bring it back at 10%. When they earned it originally, the tax rate for corporations were like 35%. So it shows you, the rich know how to get away with paying taxes, and the poor schmucks have it deducted every time from their.
You know what the solution to this is?
Deducted from their payroll.
Do you know what the solution to this is?
Making you president.
No.
I'll vote for
I
you.
want that, Morty. I'm too crazy. Listen.
We need a crazy.
The solution to this is eliminate the IRS altogether and
Crazy
flat tax on
We had a crazy president for 4 years.
Huh?
We had a crazy president for 4 years and we survived.
Not as crazy as me, Morty. but now that I'm wealthy, you can call me eccentric. Okay?
I think
When I was a kid, I had nothing.
I think much crazier than you, because he says one thing and an hour later I'd say the exact opposite, as if he never said the first thing. He doesn't care about lying. That's why nobody can debate him, because other people.
I'd rather have somebody that at least is awake and present than someone who's completely asleep and not present.
The only
Not now is a zombie president before we had a Meshuggah president.
Yes,
We had a Meshuggah president over a president who doesn't do anything and can't find his way off the stage.
I used to love Trump. He was one of my good friends.
I remember.
And that introduced me. He said, Morty Davis, the greatest guy in the world, the biggest Wall Street guy. He always was this, hyper.
He was a fan of yours.
Hyper. Hyper what?
Hyperbole.
Hyperbole, right. He always uses hyperbole. And I gave a talk because I was a member of the, what was the organization?
Freedom Foundation.
The Freedom Foundation.
Right.
Which was started by Eisenhower.
Okay.
To outside of Philadelphia. What battle was that?
Valley Forge.
To memorialize Valley Forge.
Right.
So I was on a board of trustees. So they called me up one day. They said, "We're honoring Donald Trump. We'd like you to introduce him." So I said, "Okay." I went down to Philadelphia. I introduced him. I praised him. I said he's a genius. He does everything. We try to fix the skating rink in
Wallman Rink. Yeah, he made Walmart months.
a lot
The
of
city of New York couldn't make it happen in 6 years.
no after a lot of contractors that came and spent a lot.
He made it happen, Morty.
Throughout the world, he builds amazing things. He's terrific, and I praised him so much. So afterwards, he came up and he hugged me, and he did this, and he was married at the time, so he was there with a supermodel, and she came up and was so excited.
Did she hug you too, Morty? I hope so.
And she thanked. I don't want to say that because my daughter's upset if I said. But she was so eager to get.
Okay. All right. It's just between you and me, Morty. No problem.
So I loved him, but at that time,
Yeah.
he was diametrically opposed to what he is today. He was he was pro-choice. He was for
He was a Democrat. I remember.
universal health care,
Yeah.
and he supported Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. He was
They
dynamite.
were at his wedding. Bill and Hillary were at his last wedding. Yeah.
So he he has no.
Now you became a liberal, Morty.
I became a moderate. I was never, like one. I was always eclectic. When I was younger, I was more Democratic. When I was older, but I was much more Republican.
Right.
But I was best friends with Bush the father. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you something interesting. My life would have changed dramatically because I went down. I backed Nixon. I hated Nixon initially. Then I liked the way he served. So the second term, I backed him in 1972. So my brother and I went down. There was a guy, we met with Schultz, George
Schultz, yeah.
I think he was Secretary of State, and one of the principals of Goldman Sachs. And they interviewed us. They said, we said we wanted to help Nixon. We wanted to make donation to him. So we gave some money, and then they said, look, you got a lot of wealthy friends. Why don't you tell your friends, if you give $100,000, you get invited to the White House 3 times to be with the president at dinner. And if you give $200,000, you can get an ambassadorship to someplace nowhere in the world,
Right.
$500,000, you could get one. And that time that was a lot of money. Today,
Yeah.
Put chicken feed. If you get $500,000, you might get Japan. If you get $2 million, you'll get London, Britain, or Germany.
Right.
It was like an auction, and they told me, Anyway, I gave to 30. They told me make out checks to 30 different
PACs, political action committees.
They didn't call them PACs in those days.
Yeah.
Organizations. I don't know. Do you know what they called them in those days?
It's slush money. Go ahead.
What's his name got into trouble? Steinbrenner got into trouble.
Right.
Thrown out of baseball.
Yeah, the New York Yankees.
Right.
Yeah.
Thrown out of baseball for 2 years because he gave a lot of money too.
Right.
So anyway, at that time, they come to me and they say, those were illegal. You gave to illegal. They said, we're going to take it off we won't put you in jail, but we'll take it off your lifetime deductions. Fortunately, there wasn't any, what do you call it, in those days, computers, so there's no way they kept track of it. But that wasn't why I'm telling you the story. It could have changed my life dramatically, because I was about 40 years old, and I get a call from the White House that President Nixon wants me to come down and talk to him about taking a position in the administration. I was very interested, because when I was 40, I was worth more than I was ever after. Because I did a lot of stupid things with my money after that. I invested in real estate, startup real estate. I owned a piece of California acreage that was bigger than New York City.
Wow.
And I had a partner there was crazy. Anyway, I lost $100 million. On that one, I lost tons of money on different projects. So, but I had all the money I needed. I never needed money because I never wanted to own, like some of my friends, a private jet or a yacht.
Right.
Or
You
even,
live conservatively.
no, I live in the same.
Your greatest riches, Morty, is your family. Look at all the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren.
And my friends like you.
Amazing.
There's nothing more valuable than that.
Amen.
So, anyway, I have an appointment like, it was 8 weeks before or something, 10 weeks before. So I'm ready to go in a few days. I get a call from the White House. The president asked us to tell you he can't do it on this date, but he's going to rearrange for you to come, reschedule. So I said, great, whatever the president wants, he does. So I find out they said something major came up, something important.
Yeah, Watergate.
I never heard from him after that.
Yeah.
I never took a job with any administration after that, so it would have changed my life.
Morty, it's okay. You wouldn't be able to afford the pay cut if you had to work for the government. Better you stayed in private industry.
I never
They give you 10% of your salary at best.
I was never wanting for money after.
Yeah.
Anyway, God bless you. You were a great.
God bless you too, Morty. You're the best.
I'm going to have you back real soon because we didn't cover any of the.
I know. Look, Morty, whenever you get a little bit too complacent, you need somebody to cause a little trouble in your life, reach out and call me. I'll always be there to make you.
You're always a great guest because you always make it exciting. And the only thing I worry about is my blood pressure when I at the end.
I love you. I respect you. You gave me my start in life. Anything I have, all the success I have, is due to your inspiration and support, and I'm very grateful. Always grateful, Morty.
How about that Honduran? Anyway, God bless you. I
God
love
bless you, Morty.
every day of your life should be better than the day before.
Amen.
Until eternity or until Mashiach comes.
Amen. Amir Hashem. Amir Hashem.